Climate change is a major challenge facing the entire planet. Major impacts of climate change are being witnessed in the snow-capped mountainous range of Nepal as well. Based on researches, several glaciers and glacial lakes are at high risk and many may lead to disasters at the banks of major rivers of the country. Good morning, I'm Prarambha Dahal. Let's begin with the main stories. Most local levels presenting their budget today. Agriculture, tourism and creation of employment to be prioritized. "21 glacial lakes of Nepal at risk because of climate change. Study shows banks of Koshi, Gandaki and Karnali rivers at risk. Government yet to prioritize alert systems. Wagner boss Prigozhin says he was turning his forces around from a march toward Moscow shortly after Belarusian government claims President Lukashenko had reached a deal to halt the advance. And Spain's Carlos Alcaraz defeats American Sebastian Corda to reach the final of Queen's Club Championship to take on Alex de Munier for the title. Most local levels are presenting their budget for the upcoming fiscal year today. Of the 753 local levels, a few have already introduced their budget for the upcoming fiscal. As per the Local Government Operation Act 2017, policies and programs and the budget must be introduced before the 10th of Asar as per the Nepali calendar. Pokhara, Bhaktapur and Biratnagar metropolises are presenting their policies and programs along with the budget at their respective assemblies today. Meanwhile, Kathmandu and Lalitpur metropolises have already introduced their policies and programs and are set to present their budget. Elsewhere, Birganj has already presented its budget. Most local levels have prioritized agriculture, tourism and creation of employment opportunities. The budget presented by the local levels must be endorsed before the end of the Nepali month of Asar. The Statute Convention of Janata Samajwadi Party is scheduled to begin from today. The party has made preparations to scrap inactive committees and ensure the efficiency of other committees. The convention is taking place at Kathmandu's Nepal Academy Hall. The provision of including 1,100 members in the Federal Council, 700 in Central Committee and 150 members in Political Committee has been amended in the draft of the party statute. The Central Committee will include 151 members. The statute approved by the Party Central Committee meeting held yesterday will be presented by Party Chairperson Upendra Yadav during the convention. Yadav has abstained from changing the structure of the party's Federal Council. The party statute convention will be attended by more than 800 representatives. Lumbini Province Assembly meeting has been postponed following protests from the ruling coalition itself, while alleging the province chief minister and minister of finance of introducing the budget on their own. Saying the budget was not based on geography and population, the ruling coalition itself has expressed disagreement with the budget. The province assembly meeting called for today has been postponed after several province assembly members of the ruling coalition called for amendments in the budget. Dilli Bahadur Chaudhary of Nepali Congress is the chief minister in Lumbini, while Dhana Bahadur Maski of CPN Maoist Center is the province minister for finance. The meeting has been pushed for the 28th of June, Wednesday. Chief Whip of CPN Maoist Center, Indrajit Tharu, has said that the rescheduling of the province assembly meeting for amendment in the budget was an evidence of the government lacking maturity. It is now time for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion.
Public Pulse.
The question is, what is your take on the trend to interpret party statute to one's favorable condition? Your options are A, undemocratic exercise, B, no desire to hand power to next generation, and C, lack of alternative. The voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B or C and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. The Meteorological Forecasting Division has predicted rainfall in 5 provinces today, including Bagmati. Rain has been witnessed in several parts of the country since early morning today amid the effects of the monsoon and low pressure mechanism around the Uttar Pradesh state of India. Airways and roadways are likely to be affected by heavy rainfall. The division has predicted heavy rain in various parts of Bagmati, Gandaki, Lumbini, Karnali and Sudur Paschim provinces. Likewise, heavy rain has also been predicted in several parts of Lumbini, Karnali and Sudur Paschim tonight. Major impacts of climate change are being witnessed on snow-capped mountain range. Various snow-capped mountains have begun turning into black rocks, while risks of glaciers bursting have notably increased. According to various researchers, 21 glacial lakes in Nepal are at the high risk of bursting, which can actually lead to human crisis in the banks of Koshi, Gandaki and Karnali rivers. The rise in temperature has increased the risk of formation of new glaciers due to melting of snow in the mountains and the threat of existing glaciers to burst. According to a report by EC Mode, 21 glacial lakes in Nepal and 25 in Tibet, China are at risk of bursting at any moment, causing the risks of floods and inundation in the river banks and lower regions. Excessive melting of snow in Throlanga mountain triggered massive flood that caused massive damage in Melamchi Bazar 2 years ago. 3,624 glaciers of Nepal and China are the main in fact water sources of Votekosi, Arun, Tamakosi, Sunkosi and Trisuli among other rivers of Nepal. The report by EC Mode states that out of these glaciers, 2,070 are in Nepal, 1,500 are in Tibet of China and 45 glaciers are situated in India. The water levels of Choralpa Lake in Dolakha and Inja in Solokhumbu that are considered at high risk have been decreased in a bid to minimize the risks. However, the government has remained lethargic in terms of installing and operating warning systems, which has increased the possible risk of disasters in the lower plains. In our public voice segment, we have asked in several provinces regarding services provided by the local levels to prevent diseases in cattle. Let us now take a look at what they had to say.
Public voice.
पाइलकाबाट खोप चाहिँ एकचोटी लगाएको छ
छेर्ने ज्वरो सरो नामले जुकाका लागि सामान्य उपचारहरूको व्यवस्थापन अब नगरपालिकाले सेवा केन्द्र मार्फत गर्दै आएको छ
गाउँपालिकाले पशु प्राविधिकहरू आउँछन् सुई दिन्छन् उपचार गरिदिन्छन् औषधि दिन्छन्
धेरै जस्तो औषधिहरू चाहिँ हामीले प्राइभेटबाट नै लिनु पर्ने बाध्यता रहेको छ
गाउँपालिकाले दिन सक्ने सम्म चाहिँ पर्याप्त दिएकै थियो
औषधिहरू लिएर आएर वितरण गरियो एन्टिबायोटिकहरू पनि निशुल्क त्यो बेला दिएको पनि छ
महँगो खालका औषधिहरू जस्तो सिरिन्जहरू भयो यो औषधिहरू चाहिँ हामीले बाहिरबाट नै रिफर गर्नुहुन्छ
हाम्रो गाउँपालिकाले खोप लगाउँछ दबाई दिन्छ
Time now for the international news. Wagner boss Yevgeny Prigozhin said he was turning his forces around from a march towards Moscow shortly after the Belarusian government claimed President Alexander Lukashenko had reached a deal with Prigozhin to halt the advance. Earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin vowed to punish those behind the armed uprising after the head of the Wagner private military company launched an insurrection and claimed control of military facilities in 2 Russian cities. Prigozhin had accused Russia's military leadership of striking a Wagner camp on Friday. Criminal charges against Prigozhin will be dropped and he will be sent to neighboring Belarus, according to the Kremlin. In Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky claimed Putin is very afraid following Wagner's actions, while a defense official also said Ukrainian forces launched simultaneous counteroffensives in multiple directions. Now, Canadian authorities opened the investigation into the undersea implosion of a tourist submersible that killed all 5 people on board while diving to the century-old wreck of the Titanic on Friday. Investigators from the Transportation Security Board TSB boarded the Polar Prince support vessel for the Ocean Gate Expedition's submersible to examine and document the vessel and to collect information from its voyage data recorder and other systems, TSB Chair Kathy Fox told media in St. John's, Newfoundland. A debris field from the submersible Titan was found at the bottom of the North Atlantic on Thursday by a robotic diving vehicle deployed from a Canadian search vessel, ending an intense 5-day international rescue effort. The Polar Prince set out to sea last week to provide support to Titan as it made its deep dive to the wreckage of the Titanic. Titan launched from the Polar Prince on Sunday and made its last contact with the crew 1 hour and 45 minutes later. After Titan went missing, the Polar Prince crew notified officials and joined the search. The Polar Prince will now be included in the investigation to determine its role in the Titan tragedy, according to Canada's Transportation Safety Board. The electoral battle ahead of Argentina's presidential election has heated up after Economy Minister Sergio Massa entered the race in a dramatic twist to take on the main opposition candidates, which include a conservative city mayor, a former security minister, and a libertarian economist. Massa was announced as the unity candidate for the ruling Peronist bloc somewhat unexpectedly on Friday night. The deadline for candidate nominations closed on Saturday, making the start of the run-up to the general elections on the 22nd of October. Competing to lead the main conservative opposition bloc, which tops overall polls, are moderate Buenos Aires City Mayor Horacio Larreta and ex-security minister Patricia Bullrich. On the other hand, libertarian economist Javier Milei is the most popular individual candidate in the polls, with the support of many voters fed up with the political status quo. However, in the party polls, his candidacy ranks third. Larreta, Bullrich and Massa are almost tied in the polls, with Milei slightly ahead. With no candidate or party polling above 50%, the October elections will most likely lead to a runoff in November. Now, Israeli settlers torched at least 2 houses in the Palestinian village Safa near the West Bank town of Ramallah on Saturday, residents have said. There were no immediate reports of casualties out there. Hours earlier, a Palestinian militant opened fire at an Israeli checkpoint in the occupied West Bank before he was shot dead by forces at the scene, Israel's police said, and settlers set fire to homes in a nearby Palestinian village, residents have said. The Al-Aqsa Marchers Brigade, an armed group associated with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah party, claimed the gunman as a member. Official Palestinian news agency Wafa identified him as an 18-year-old from Kafr Aqab. The Israeli military said one Israeli suspect had been arrested and that its forces used anti-riot measures to break a Palestinian stone throwing that erupted in the village. Later, clashes erupted between Palestinians hurling stones and Israeli soldiers and settlers. Violence surged this week in the West Bank, where for over a year, the military has conducted regular sweeps, leading to repeated clashes with Palestinian fighters amid a spate of Palestinian street attacks on Israelis. The past few days saw deadly clashes in the city of Jenin, a fatal Palestinian shooting attack near a settlement, attacks on Palestinian villages by settlers, and a rare Israeli airstrike in the West Bank against militants. Now, thousands of LGBTQ+ individuals and their allies took to the streets of Mexico City on Saturday for this year's LGBT Pride Parade. Dressed in colorful, glittery costumes, some face-painted and some in elaborate attires, participants danced to the beats of drums while waving the LGBT community's trademark rainbow flag. Parade attendees marched through Mexico City's iconic Reforma Boulevard, which looked packed from above. Mexico City is home to the most visible gay community in the country, and couples freely express affection in many parts of the city. However, outside the capital, attitudes differ sharply, with an impunity towards discrimination and reports of violence against LGBTQ citizens, activists have reported.
Sports news.
Now, Team Nepal's dream of playing in the World Cup has ended for now, as they failed to qualify for the Super 6 of the ICC Cricket World Cup qualifiers after suffering a 7-wicket defeat to the Netherlands. In the Group A match played at the Takashinga Sports Club in Harare of Zimbabwe, Nepal were put to bat and were bowled out for a paltry 167 runs in 44.3 overs. None of the Nepali batters could provide a notable contribution. Nepal were under pressure from the very beginning of the innings after losing the wicket of Asif Sheikh when only 7 runs were on the board inside 2.2 overs. Nepal then kept losing wickets at regular intervals and were bowled out for 167 runs. Skipper Rohit Paudel top scored for Nepal with 33. Opener Kushal Vutel and Sandeep Lamechhane added 27 runs each, while Bhim Sarke chipped in with 22 runs. Logan van Beek was the pick of the Dutch bowlers with 4 wickets. Chasing a target of 168 runs, the Netherlands ramped home in 27.1 overs, losing only 3 wickets. Opener Max O'Dowd was the leading run scorer for the Netherlands with a 75-ball 90. Bas de Leede also scored an unbeaten 41 of 39 balls, while Bikramjit Singh chipped in with 30 runs. Sandeep Lamechhane picked 2 wickets for Nepal. Nepal finished in the 4th spot in Group A with 2 points, winning 1 match and losing 3. In another Group A match, Zimbabwe defeated West Indies by 35 runs. Zimbabwe, the Netherlands and West Indies have qualified for the Super 6 from Group A. We now have the updates from the SAF Championship. Team Nepal have crashed out of the SAF Championship 2023 from the group stage after suffering a 2-0 defeat against India. In the Group A match played at the Kantipur Stadium in Bangalore of India, the first half ended in a goalless stalemate, although both teams created a few chances. Sunil Chhetri finally broke the deadlock by scoring in the 62nd minute to give India the lead. This was Sunil's 4th goal in the ongoing SAF Championship, while it was his 90th international goal. Moez Singh scored in the 80th minute to seal India's 2-0 win over Nepal. Nepal are winless in the tournament as they had lost to Kuwait 3-1 on Wednesday. With the win, India have advanced into the semi-finals with a game in hand. In another Group A match, Kuwait thumped Pakistan 4-0 also to qualify for the semis. Nepal will now face Pakistan on Tuesday. Both teams have already crashed out of the tournament and will be playing for pride. And now, before we wrap up, here's a look into the top stories one more time. Most local levels presenting their budget today. Agriculture, tourism and creation of employment opportunities to be prioritized. 21 glacial lakes of Nepal at risk because of climate change. Study shows banks of Koshi, Gandaki and Karnali rivers at risk. Government yet to prioritize alert systems. Wagner boss Prigozhin says he was turning his forces around from a march towards Moscow shortly after Belarusian government claims President Lukashenko had reached a deal to halt the advance. And Spain's Carlos Alcaraz defeats American Sebastian Corda to reach the final of Queen's Club Championship to take on Alex de Munier for the title. That is all for the moment. Our next English bulletin will be at 6 p.m. Thank you for staying with us. Have a beautiful day ahead.